Guilt. It's an awful emotion, a horrible feeling. And it's the thing that you hear over and over and over again that you have to go through, that you have to sit in recovery to be able to get to that place of freedom from your eating disorder. And that is true. In recovery, fear and resistance is the target for where you need to attack. And guilt and backlash are the pieces of evidence that tell you that you are doing the work. But that doesn't stop guilt from feeling awful. And I think we do have to make space for the fact that it is very normal and natural to dislike feelings of guilt. In fact, it is literally your body's mechanism. It's your body's emotional tool to say you have done something wrong. That's what it is. And so it makes complete sense that when your body sends you that emotional signal, you feel awful. And it also leads to this knee-jerk, how can I fix it? Now, in all sorts of different contexts, guilt is kind of helpful. As human beings, we have a complex network of beliefs and morals and stuff that we're taught in all sorts of different ways, shapes and forms that guides how we are good people. You know, you're taught that you don't hurt other people and taught that you say thank you to people. You're taught that you don't steal. You're taught that if you pull on someone's hair, it hurts them and that's not very nice. All of these things are things we're taught from yay big and we learn. And therefore, if you were to just go out and yank on someone's hair, you'd probably feel guilty for it. And for a good reason. Because actually it's not very nice. And it would make sense then, the guilt. But the truth is, the guilt that you experience in recovery is not your core self's guilt. It is your eating disorder's guilt. And that is a very distinctly different thing. And I think recognizing that is really helpful in moving through it. When you're in recovery, there is you, your core recovering self, with all of your goals and ambitions and dreams and your values. And then there is your eating disorder, with very different goals and very different ambitions and very different values and very different beliefs. Distinct set of thoughts and behaviours and emotions that relate to eating disorder, and a distinct set that are you. And the truth is, that emotion of guilt, as I said, it's designed as a response to tell you that you've done something wrong, that you've done something you shouldn't have done. But in recovery, that guilt is coming from eating disorder. When you take a recovery action and you get a backlash full of guilt, what is actually happening is your eating disorder is telling you you've done something wrong. You have done something that has pissed it off. And I think one of the biggest mistakes in recovery, and it's a very natural one, is that we forget that in the heat of the moment and we just get swept up in the guilt and that innate desire to fix, to solve, to find something that we can do to make that guilt go away, and that plan that we'll never do that again and we'll change it all. I remember that only too well. Absolutely, I remember that in my own recovery journey. And I think it really, really helps to recognise that actually that guilt is not your core self. That guilt is your eating disorder. And to remember, yes, you have chosen proactively and intentionally to piss your eating disorder off, because you are choosing proactively and intentionally to recover. And that with that, you can predict that everything you do that rebels against your eating disorder, it is going to try and make you feel guilty for. Because in the eyes of your eating disorder, you have done things wrong and badly. And this is where it's really valuable to recognize these distinct two different things going on. The what is right for you and your recovering self is wrong in the eyes of your eating disorder. And so wherever you are in your recovery journey, when you are finding yourself sitting, battling, wading through guilt, remember, it is your eating disorder's guilt. And something else I'd like to add on to this, which I think is super important, is to know that no matter how amazing your toolbox of self-soothe actions, your toolkit for self-care, no matter how many amazing techniques you have for grounding, nothing is going to completely eradicate the discomfort of sitting in that storm. Nothing. And maybe that sounds really awful, but I think it can actually do a disservice when you notice that you're trying all these different things and you're like, well, I've got all these different techniques and these activities and I'm doing the grounding and I'm touching my senses and I'm doing this and I've got my bath and I've got that and I've got the movie on and I've got all these different things that I'm doing, and yet you can think that the storm is still raging. And I think what happens is actually we need to recognise that it's not about using those tools to stop the storm. It's about using whatever tools work for you to help you sit in the storm, to help you weather it. It's not about these things making recovery feel nice and good. It's about making it feel more tolerable. And that is a distinctly different place. Because I remember in my recovery journey, I'd practice these different things and think, I must be doing it wrong because it still feels awful. I must be doing something wrong because I've got all this guilt and all of this fear and all of this going on, all this backlash and all this emotion, and I'm trying all of these different things and they're just not making anything feel better. And so then I'd be in that place where I think, well, my tools aren't working, and also then maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe the way I'm doing recovery is wrong. Maybe I need to do it different. And it just became this great big messy thing. And actually it helped me massively to just sit and recognise I had to weather the storm. That no amount of grounding or childhood movies or jigsaw puzzles or petting my dog or any other kind of reframing exercise, anything, nothing was going to make sitting in the storm feel nice. They might help it to be more tolerable, but it was still a storm and I still had to weather it. And actually recognising that took a huge amount of the pressure off, because it allowed me to focus on what I just had to do, which didn't necessarily make it any easier to do the thing, but it made it simpler. And because recovery is hard, we have to look for all the ways in which we can make it simple. So my message from today is guilt is part of the recovery journey. Actually, when you feel guilt, it means that you are doing the work, and actually it tells you very clearly what you need to be doing more of. It is not something to shy away from or to back off from. But it's also incredibly normal that it's not very pleasant and that you don't really want to do it. That's a normal, natural thing, just in the same way that it's a normal thing to not want to walk into fear. These are very normal human behaviours, drives. But it's recognising that that guilt, that is your eating disorder's guilt. That is your eating disorder saying, you haven't done it right according to me. And it's recognising that recovering you isn't doing eating disorder anymore. Recovering you is carving a new path. Recovering you is moving in a different direction. Recovering you is rebelling against everything that is eating disorder. And the more you do this, the more clear-cut that differentiation will become, the more clarity you will have to be able to separate out eating disorder and yourself. But just in this moment, wherever you are, just know that guilt is your eating disorder saying, you've not done it how I want you to do it. And actually it means, therefore, that you are doing the right thing. And from that, recognise as well that there's all sorts of different things that you may be able to do to help you weather it. But just know that you're not doing it wrong if none of those things are meaning that the storm passes immediately. The storm will pass and you will get stronger through it. But there is a very different thing between using tools to help you tolerate and weather a storm versus feeling like you must be doing something wrong because these tools aren't making the storm go away. What makes that storm go away is you weathering it, you standing firm in your recovery shoes, you refusing to budge, you sitting there and growing and strengthening in that storm, and the storms will roll on through. That's recovery. They will roll on through. What you're in this moment, it will pass. It's not going to be forever. And there will be another one that comes around the corner. But the you who weathers this, the more you do it, the stronger you will become. And the truth is, the storms will not roll in forever. The you who commits to doing this, who consistently and committedly is sitting in the storm, is pushing into the fear, is doing the things that bring that guilt to the surface, that is a you who is fighting for your freedom. And that is a you who is recovering. And yes, those storms will roll in, but eventually they won't be so thick and fast. There'll be more periods of blue skies. There'll be more periods of just neutral skies. And eventually the storms will pass. So please, know that you are not alone in this. Recovery can feel incredibly lonely at times, but you are not alone. Know that guilt is a sign that you are doing what you need to be doing, and that recovery isn't possible if you avoid it or backstep or sidestep it or try to divert it. Know that guilt is a sign that you are doing the work, and know that you can sit in the storm. It's not about liking it or loving it. It's about acceptance and tolerating. And you can do that. And with every storm that passes, you are getting stronger. Got this.